welcome to this edition of Trader Talk TV. Today we've got Matt Bennathan in the office. Matt, how are you?
Very well indeed, thanks Kieran, how are you?
I'm very well, very well.
Excellent.
Matt is the SVP of Global Data, is that right?
That's right, yeah, global data. We do sort of focus on European data and CDP services actually.
Yeah.
But look, who doesn't like a global in their job title?
Everybody loves global.
Everyone
Before we jump into today's discussion, and we're talking about like the realities of cookie deprecation and what's real and what's not real. I want to talk just a little bit about Zeotap because I know people know it, but like just give us the sort of like the helicopter view of what you guys do and how you work within the ecosystem.
Perfect, thank you. So we do two things very well at Zeotap. The first of which is CDP. So we license our technology platform to advertisers to enable them to collect, manage and execute and activate against first-party data across all sorts of channels. We also use that very same platform to collect cool data, which we're pushing downstream to activation platforms and selling to agencies on variable terms as opposed to committed. So we've got a CDP side of the business, direct to advertisers, and we've got a data side of the business to agencies across programmatic and social.
Okay, brilliant. And today we're talking about the realities of cookie deprecation because it is the hottest topic in ad tech. What happens when Google finally pulls the plug? And I believe you're about to eat a hat next year when we get
Yes.
Can I choose the hat? I'm going to get one of those big tall hats. There's a lot of eating that, like, you know.
Yeah, so I wondered if this was going to come up, and I did think about bringing one of my own hats with me. I've got a New York Rangers hat. It's quite a big woolly hat. Chunky. It's a chunky hat.
I'll bring some Tabasco sauce for you so you can taste it better.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to need to saute it up for quite a while. There's a lot of butter.
Wow, that's a lot of digestion.
Big woolly one. So this goes back to a post. It was earlier on in the year. I think it was January, maybe February. I don't know if we're going to do some clever editing and we'll cut to that post on LinkedIn. And it clearly says, if Google says, it's me, and I say, if Google deprecate third-party cookies, I will eat my hat.
You could be right yet, Matt, in fairness.
Well, that's generous.
But anyway, let's talk about realities because regardless of Google's activities, cookie deprecation has happened across multiple browsers anyway. So we're in this game. But let's talk about realities because like you get lots of people talking about cookieless targeting and all the rest of it, like we do not use third-party cookies, etc. But I want to talk about what's real and what's not real, and I want to talk about specifically about how you guys are working in that space.
Yeah, perfect. I think I'm bored about talking about this. I know you are. I'm sure lots of people out there are also bored and tired about it. But the reality is kicking in now, and that's unquestionable. What I want to move on to is not talking about cookies, but talking about use cases.
Okay.
And talking about outcomes for advertisers and agencies. Yeah. Because cookies are nothing more than a mechanism that we have been using at our convenience, which has slowly been deprecating for all sorts of reasons, regulatory, as well as moves by big players like Safari and Firefox and so on. But you know, to me, this is all about use cases and outcomes. What do agencies and advertisers want to deliver, and what alternative mechanisms can we utilize to deliver the same outcomes for agencies and advertisers? Not a cookie in sight. Where I'd like our business to get to is next year to be saying we're deprecating cookies. We don't need them anymore. They're only an ingredient. They're a part of what we do now to deliver outcomes for advertisers and agencies.
So let's talk about what you mean by that. Let's jot it out and talk about what you mean by sort of like use cases and outcomes. And I know that we all talk about what the future is and what we can and can't do, but like it'd be interesting to talk about the application of it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so there's two things that we currently use cookies for. The first of which is linkages. So we're understanding user behavior that's been collected through a cookie, through a cookie ID, and then we're stitching that together with other identifiers and other attributes that we've got. I'll talk about that first. The other one is downstream sync. So we use cookies to sync with activation platforms, DSPs and SSPs. Not social, that's all syncing on mobile advertising IDs, on MAIDs. But let's start with the first point, which is linkages. So everything that we do at Zeotap is all centered on identity resolution. It's all about people-based data. It's all about persistent IDs. Okay, so we're working with the biggest mobile advertising, the biggest telco companies in Europe as our data partners, and we're ingesting persistent identifiers, mobile advertising IDs, MAIDs, hashed email addresses as well, which we all call HEMs. We're also collecting or creating or utilizing a lot of universal IDs, UIDs, and I'll expand on that point in a moment or two. We're also ingesting app usage data. Really, really powerful stuff. Of course, it's attached to a mobile advertising ID, but the data, the behavioral data that we're getting from app usage is extremely powerful. We're also getting factual demographic data. Factual demos. I hope everyone can read my writing because my wife can't, complains about it all the time. We're also looking at IP addresses.
Yeah.
And how we can make better use of those. And then we're also collecting cookies and behavioral data there. But immediately, I should add to this point here, this is about offline data, which of course is an important point for us. What you can see here is we're attaching everything, persistent identifiers, mobile advertising IDs, hashed email addresses, universal IDs, these are all persistent identifiers. We're attaching app usage data, offline data like demographic inputs, gender, age, and so on. We're going to be collecting and making more use of IP addresses as well. And we're stitching all of this together within a proprietary ID graph. But it's all about persistent identifiers in the first place. And cookies, behavioral data from cookies, it's a part of that. But it's only a composite part of a much broader picture that we're pulling together, a much broader profile that we're pulling together of a particular user, a particular persistent ID.
And all of this is, I mean, it's important to say, but all of this is sort of like privacy enabled, you know, because we can't talk about the reason cookies are going away is because of the privacy issue, but this is all sort of privacy enabled, and that's why you're able to sort of build these ID graphs.
100% consented data. We do not use any data that has not been consented. Of course, being built in Germany for GDPR is a particular strength of Zeotap. And having worked for big US tech businesses in the past, trying to reverse engineer stuff into European legislation is sometimes challenging, Kieran.
Very challenging.
Yeah, very challenging.
So what you're saying here is that even if the cookie goes away, it's just one part of your view of the world. Basically, you're not. It's not like an end-all situation. It's just part of it.
Correct.
Cookies stay. Hence the reason why you probably talked about eating your hat, because it really doesn't matter in the long scheme of things for your business and helping sort of advertisers and buyers. That, you know, if that disappeared, it would just be a tiny part of the overall pie of sort of the ID pie.
That's exactly right. And as I say, we shouldn't be talking so much about cookies. We should be talking about outcomes and use cases. What we're doing here is we're building up a comprehensive view of user behavior, of a person, of people-based data, so that we can target, we can activate against that ID, that persistent ID, in programmatic or in social as well.
Okay, so talk about sort of this downstream piece you're talking about. So this is sort of like, this is laying out why cookies are a problem, but they're not a huge problem. But let's talk about sort of like this downstream thing and the use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we go on to that one, I just wanted to highlight a particular area, and that's around universal IDs, because again, this has been quite a hot topic, and it's been discussed quite a lot. We as an identity specialist, whether we're dealing with first-party data or third-party data, it's very straightforward for us to implement a universal ID. We've done so. Ours is called ID+. And of course that universal ID Plus, is interoperable with everybody else's universal IDs. We're working more and more with ID5 now as well, because we want to expand, we want to extend the reach and the application and the value of universal IDs. And we think ID5 can help us do that. We also think that what the Trade Desk are doing with EUID and of course what others are doing with their universal IDs is helpful. But again, it's important to stress that it's part of the solution. It's not
the panacea.
No, it's not the panacea.
Yeah.
And I think that using a combination of mobile advertising IDs, of hashed email addresses, universal IDs, persistent identifiers, as well as IP addresses and app usage and factual offline data, that is going to build up a far better picture, a more rounded picture of what we can do for activation and measurement use cases as well.
So let's move on to sort of use cases and sort of this downstream syncing you were talking about earlier on. Let's can we just sort of jot that out, what that means, how that looks, because people will be interested about, because people are used about the applications. I mean, that's the key of all this. So let's jot it out on the board.
Yeah, of course. So we're using persistent IDs, we're using all sorts of different data inputs to create people-based data, okay? And that's what I really want us as a business to be focused on, is people-based data. Okay. Now, we've got a whole load of linkages, and we've stitched together using our ID graph people-based data. The second use case for cookies at the moment is downstream sync. Now, before we get onto that point, let's talk a little bit about how we've organised our people-based data before we're pushing it downstream. We've got an IAB taxo. There's the audience taxonomy, 1.1. It's nice and consistent. It is good across all vertical sectors. It's very recognisable and understandable to our agency buyers and our advertisers alike. So we're stitching everything together and then organising it into a common language, a common language that everyone understands. But what we're also doing is we're building some cool, unique stuff. For example, Zeotap tribes. Now, this is making really good use of the unique and differentiated data assets that we've got. Again, think about pulling all of these different points together from persistent IDs and app usage and so on. From the mobile telcos, we get some incredible data sets, and we're organising that. We've organised that into 12 distinct tribes, which serve different verticals quite effectively. What we've also got is validated demos as well. Now, still, advertisers understand and want to target a core demographic audience. Yes, it's nice to get into interest or intention data, but actually just core demographics are still critically important to get that scale and reach from a reach and frequency perspective. So we're taking deterministic data points from our mobile telcos, age and gender of people when they're literally signing up to contracts. And then we're scaling that out and validating those demographic audiences. In terms of downstream sync, that's predominantly facilitated through MAIDs to social platforms, social or consumer platforms. Now, of course, in reality, you've got two big beasts in the room there. You've got Meta and you've got TikTok. We're very pleased with our shiny new integration with TikTok. And of course, we're making quite a lot of noise about that at the moment. Yeah. Meta is still the gorilla in the room, of course. TikTok are doing very, very well in terms of attention and engagement, and they're also catching up in terms of their advertising services. But there's absolutely no cookies involved in downstream sync when it comes to the social platforms. That's all mobile advertising IDs for very obvious reasons. Of course, we'll put cookies on here for now because they are still being used in downstream sync. But there's a really important area which is new for us, but not new for the industry, and that's contextual extension.
Okay.
Now, if you think about the people-based data that we've got, about the persistent identifiers that we've got, we have a tremendous opportunity to understand what that person, what that user is doing in different contexts. We understand their behavior from the environments that they are in. So we're working with a couple of different contextual vendors on proof of concepts, and over the next couple of months we'll finalise our rollout plans for 2024. But it's such a simple point, but such an important point, because context can reach into areas that cookies could never touch anyway. And of course, that means Safari and Firefox predominantly. The other bit that we're doing, again, is back to the humble IP address, because this can also be used for downstream sync. And we've been analysing bidstream data to understand what sort of overlaps and therefore what sort of sync potential we've got using IP address. And yeah, you're going to lose a little bit in terms of the granularity of the data that may be involved, but you gain tremendously in terms of scale and reach. So already you're seeing almost 40% of IP address in bidstream data for Chrome, which is arguably more than cookies anyway. People tend to think of that at about 30% for cookie coverage. We're seeing almost 40% of IP address in Chrome bidstream, so there's an immediate replacement there for Chrome. But we see it 50% plus of Safari and Firefox. So immediately, this provides us with an opportunity to sync our people-based data assets, which are built at an individual level, to sync them with IP address downstream. And that means that advertisers and agencies can still deliver the targeting that they wanted to in the first place.
Okay. And in terms of activation around this stuff, is it a case that you'd like load this data into DSPs and SSPs and allow buyers and sellers to kind of activate their inventory? Is that sort of activate data against their inventory?
Two models. The first of which is open web programmatic with the DSPs and the SSPs.
Yeah.
So we are syncing always on taxonomies, the IAB taxonomy, Zeotap unique assets, Zeotap tribes, for example, and they're available in marketplaces in the big DSPs and in the big SSPs as well. We then advise and make recommendations as to which audiences and which segments agency buyers, some clients direct, but predominantly agency buyers, should use from those syndicated taxonomies that are always on downstream. We can build cool custom stuff as well for really big advertisers and really big campaigns. The second play is around social. Now, the social boys and girls, they don't have these marketplaces. They used to, or certainly Facebook used to, but they switched it all off after Cambridge Analytica. After about $70 billion of market cap collapsed in a day or so trading. And they said, right, that's it. We don't want any more data in and out of this platform. Yeah. But arguably a self-serving decision at the same time. Yeah. But anyway, so they did that, and all of the social platforms. We work a lot with Snap. We love those guys. We work a lot with TikTok, brilliant, and also Meta as well. And they don't have marketplaces, so we provide a managed data service to those agencies who want to activate in specific seats for specific advertisers.
Right. So an onboarding process for them to get into those platforms.
Yeah, so there's we'll do a whole load of work for them within our platform, and then we'll inject that audience specifically to their buying seats.
Okay.
So it's lightweight from their perspective. Yeah. We'll do the work for them. Critical point here is for an agency to be in control of the audience strategy, the data strategy, across both open web programmatic and social is really valuable for that agency. If they're working with a big advertiser that has an existing segmentation, has an existing way of doing things that we can replicate in open web programmatic and in social, that means that the agency remains in control of that audience and that data strategy, which I think means they add more value to that advertiser.
So looking at this from the outside, the cookies are a small part of the greater pie. You can operate without cookies or with them because there's a melange of various sort of signals that you ingest and build your ID graph around. And then looking at the sort of the downstream sync stuff, there is so much opportunity for you to can bring more stuff into that people-based marketing data that you're building out, particularly the IOE tech, so the tribes and the social integrations which you've talked about. And then I suppose the exciting part is that your ability then to kind of activate that data into the open web via DSP, Trade Desk, DV360, whoever it might be. Yep. And then obviously focusing on a fairly sizable marketplace, which is the social marketplace. Yep. Whether it's the Metas of the world, or Snaps of the world, or TikToks of the world, or the Reddits maybe. I don't know if you're doing anything in there. But then the ability to kind of onboard, segment data against Zeotap, do some work, and then activate that through their seats. So there's loads going on there. Beautiful. That's a very nice summary. Reddit, love the platform and a really good bunch of people. I worked with them when I was at Oracle, but not so much at Zeotap. They've got some fantastic data assets. Give me a call. Shameless. The only point that you didn't highlight quite so much, which I really want to draw some attention back to that, because the scale and the reach. If you're dealing with a persistent identifier in the first place, and really understanding the environment within which that person is operating, that they are in, that gives you all sorts of cool things that you can do from a first-party perspective, but also from a prospecting and a prospecting campaign perspective. Contextual still is king, Matt, even after all these years. After all these years, exactly, mate, exactly. And on that hopeful note, we'll leave it there. Matt, thanks for coming into the office and bringing us through that. It was fascinating, and we look forward to the next Trailer Talk when you come in and eat your hat live on camera. Fantastic. I very much look forward to eating my hat live on camera. Thank you. And that was Trailer Talk TV, and we will see you next time.